After all that Harbor Point Communications had done for me, Victoria sat across from me, her gaze as cold as ice, her voice sharp like a knife cutting through the air. I consider this a betrayal. I sat there, my throat tightening, my hands gripping my purse to prevent them from shaking. I never imagined I would face her in such a situation, so early in the morning, in a meeting that came with no prior warning. Although I had left behind the tension of Tuesday morning, I was now left with a heavy feeling, an invisible burden pressing down on my chest. Victoria, Before I could speak, she interrupted, her long fingers gently tapping on the desk with a calm, almost chilling demeanor. "No need to justify," she said, her tone even. She handed me a printed email, and from that moment, I knew I had no more words left. "I have received confirmation that you participated in an interview with North Bay Solutions on Thursday. You reported that you had a dental appointment that morning." Her words severed any remaining connection. I am Addison Walker, and she could not treat me this way. I had dedicated 6 years of my life to Harbor Point Communications in Spokane, Washington. 6 years, starting from scratch, building a client list, generating millions in revenue, and turning each key account into a trusted relationship. But in an instant, all those efforts seemed to vanish, and no one cared anymore. "Security will meet you at your workstation," Victoria announced, her fingers gently moving across the computer screen as if I were nothing. "Your access to the building is revoked, but you may retrieve your personal belongings." She handed me my company ID as though it were an insignificant item. My heart raced, a hot sensation rising in my chest. For 3 years, I had come to this office with perfect presentations, with just requests for fairness, a salary increase I deserved. But each time I raised the issue, the answer was always wait more, excuses about budget issues, even though the company had exceeded profit expectations. This feeling, this injustice, was like a deep wound that could never heal. I stood up, adjusted my coat, and sighed lightly. I understand. I didn't know if I was the only one able to keep my composure in this situation, but a part of me felt that maintaining some dignity was the most important thing. Victoria looked at me as if she had expected me to cry or beg, but instead, I simply extended my hand and said, "I wish Harbor Point and you success." A brief, awkward handshake, as if there was nothing left between us to share. As I began packing my belongings into a cardboard box, the security guard stood like a shadow beside me, and I could sense his discomfort. My colleagues looked on with worried eyes, but I just smiled gently, no drama, no tears. I didn't want to create a scene. I just wanted to leave in silence. As I stepped through the glass doors for the last time, the sunlight of April brushed against my face, and I suddenly realized that this moment was not the end. It was the beginning of a new chapter. Victoria thought she had hurt me, but in reality, I was the one in control. When the box was placed in the trunk of my car, I looked at my phone screen. A message from David Klein, the CEO of North Bay Solutions, appeared. "Can we reschedule our final discussion for 2 p.m. today?" I smiled. I knew she had no idea what was coming next. I drove home, the box in my trunk, and reflected on the years that had passed. I had joined Harbor Point right after graduating, with ambition and hope. I started with tasks like organizing notes and making coffee deliveries, despite holding a prestigious marketing degree from Washington State University. I never got discouraged or gave up. I worked hard, volunteered for tough projects, and built relationships with clients who others had dismissed as impossible to please. Every step, whether small or large, I kept pushing forward. By my 4th year, I was entrusted with managing North Bay Solutions, a client that accounted for 30% of Harbor Point's revenue. And now, all I had was a cardboard box. But I didn't feel regret. I knew that the road ahead would be wide open, and I would keep moving forward. David Klein, the CEO of North Bay, had specifically requested that I take on their account management position after I intervened in a crisis that their previous representative failed to resolve. He had made it clear to me that I was the only one who truly understood what they needed before they even asked. As a result, North Bay extended their contract and doubled their marketing budget with us, opening a new chapter full of potential in our relationship. Victoria had been very pleased at that time. She said that the creativity and decisiveness I had shown were exactly what the company needed, and those were qualities she truly valued. However, those compliments were never reflected in my salary. Once success was achieved, I decided to submit my first salary increase request, backed by revenue figures and performance metrics that were undeniable. Victoria, with a rehearsed expression of regret, explained that the budget couldn't accommodate the request that year. However, she reassured me that my contributions were still acknowledged, and I reluctantly accepted her response, even though I knew it wasn't adequate. At that time, I hadn't yet completed building my client portfolio, and the economy was not particularly favorable. However, when the next year came around, I received the same response, despite securing 3 new major clients and winning an industry award for a campaign I had developed. She promised that the following year would bring better conditions. But that didn't happen. Victoria continued to ask me to tighten the purse strings, while she drove to work in a new luxury SUV and the company leased another floor of office space to accommodate its expansion. I didn't understand, but I remained loyal. I believed that one day, my efforts would be recognized. The third rejection came 6 months ago, right after I successfully negotiated and brought in a contract that increased North Bay's annual value by 40%. Your performance is outstanding, Victoria had praised, but we are prioritizing infrastructure investment this year. We can revisit this issue in the summer, she said. That was when something inside me broke. For the first time in 6 years, I sat down and began editing my resume. I didn't do it out of anger or a desire for revenge, I did it out of self-respect. I deserved more than endless rejections and empty promises. I didn't expect Victoria to find out I was looking for a new job before I had the chance to resign. When I got home, with the cardboard box in my hand, I placed it on the kitchen table and looked at it. Everything became clear to me. I wasn't simply taking a day off or going to meet a client. I had lost my job. The weight of that reality pressed down on my chest, making it hard to breathe. My phone rang, and Olivia's name, my closest friend, appeared on the screen. When I answered, she said, "I just heard the news. Thomas texted me, are you okay?" Thomas was Olivia's boyfriend and an IT specialist at Harbor Point. The news spread like wildfire. I'm handling it, I replied, leaning back against the kitchen chair, feeling as though everything was suddenly crumbling around me. Olivia's voice was full of indignation. This is so unfair. Everyone knows that you're the sole reason North Bay has continued its partnership with Harbor Point. Victoria just feels threatened by your exceptional performance in the job. Her words echoed in my mind, as if they were ringing an alarm that I had ignored for far too long. Olivia continued, her voice now clearly filled with resentment. Everyone there knows how hard you've worked to retain major clients like North Bay. And Victoria? She only sees herself in her new car, in her high-end meetings, while you're the one who's truly carrying the company. It's just so unfair. Olivia's words felt like a revelation, a truth I had tried to ignore all this time. I had spent so many years proving myself, but all I received in return was indifference and rejection. What I had done for the company, what I had contributed, never seemed to be enough. Yes, I had looked for another job, but not out of spite or anger. I just wanted a place where I was valued, where my efforts weren't overlooked. Olivia paused for a moment, perhaps sensing my silence. "What will you do now?" she asked. Her question was gentle but full of concern. I smiled weakly, though I didn't feel at ease. "I don't know yet. Maybe I need some time to think. But I can't keep staying in a company where I'm not valued properly." Olivia sighed, then continued, "You can find other opportunities. You deserve a better job, you deserve to be treated better." Her words were a strong encouragement, and I could feel the warmth of this friendship. Even though everything seemed hopeless, I knew at least there was one person who understood me and stood by my side. That whole day, I sat alone, staring at the cardboard box. The items in it were all that remained from my 6 years of work at Harbor Point. Part of me felt relief, as if I had shed a heavy burden. But another part of me felt confused, as I looked at the uncertain future before me. Although I had given everything, what I was always seeking was not promotion or grand success, but deserved recognition. I didn't want to accept empty promises or unreasonable rejections anymore. I wanted to find a place where I could truly grow, where I was given the power and value in return for what I had put in. The next morning, as I was preparing to leave, my phone rang again. A message from David Klein, CEO of North Bay, appeared on the screen. "Can we meet this afternoon? I'd like to discuss the upcoming project and the next steps in our collaboration." I looked at the message, a sense of unease rising in my chest. North Bay was still an important client for me, but I couldn't help thinking about Olivia's words. Perhaps this was an opportunity to prove my worth once again, but this time I would do everything for myself, not for empty promises. I replied to the message, "I will be there at 2 p.m. At this point, there was no more fear or concern about the old company. I felt more confident than ever. The next step in my life would no longer depend on anyone else but me. I had everything ready before stepping out the door. Despite a slight flutter in my heart, I felt ready. As the car took me to North Bay, my thoughts about the past slowly faded, making room for a new feeling of calm and confidence. The image of Victoria, with her empty promises and indifference, gradually dimmed in my mind. I was no longer dependent on recognition from others. Entering a new chapter of my life, I knew that only I could decide my future. When I arrived at the North Bay building, the atmosphere inside made me feel so different compared to Harbor Point. Everything was modern, spacious, and bright. I entered the elevator and went up to the 30th floor. It no longer felt like I was part of the outdated system, but part of something fresh and full of promise. It was time for me to step out of the shadows and embrace the light. When I entered the meeting room, David was already waiting, smiling, and standing up to greet me. His friendly demeanor immediately put me at ease. We shook hands, and I could feel the respect in that handshake. There was no intimidation, no imposition. Just an invitation to a new opportunity. "Addison, thank you for coming," David said. "We can start whenever you're ready." I sat down, facing him. "Thank you for giving me this opportunity, David. I really appreciate the professionalism and fairness you bring." David smiled and nodded. "That's why we wanted you to join our team. You not only understand the work, but you also understand our clients." The conversation continued smoothly, and I felt no doubt about my decision. This was the right move. I could feel the respect in every word David said, a stark contrast to what I had experienced before. I realized that I no longer had to endure indifference and unfairness. I deserved to be treated with respect, and I would work hard, but this time, it would be for myself, not for empty promises. When the meeting ended, David said, "We hope you'll join our team. We need people like you." I stood up, shook his hand again, but this time I felt a sense of confidence in every gesture. "I look forward to working with you." And as I left the meeting room, I felt like a new door had opened before me. A door not just leading me to a new job, but to a future where I would be recognized, appreciated, and most importantly, where I could grow according to my true value. My phone rang. An unknown number. I hesitated for a moment but then answered, curious to know who was calling. "Addison Walker?" A soft, yet unmistakably sharp voice came through. "Yes, this is she," I replied. "I'm Elaine Winters. I'm a member of the board at Harbor Point Communications." A strange tightening sensation formed in my stomach. The board rarely gets involved in employee matters, and now, I was receiving a direct call from them. "I understand that there was an incident today related to your employment," she continued, speaking slowly and deliberately. "I would very much like to meet with you tomorrow to discuss this matter." Elaine's words carried a heavy tone, as if the situation wasn't just a simple mistake, but something more serious than I had anticipated. I realized that Victoria had not only made a wrong decision but had also put the company at risk of losing a major client like North Bay. Damage control, I replied calmly, though a surge of anger was rising inside me. I appreciate the tranquility of the winter season, but I have accepted another position. A moment of silence filled the space. I'd like to inquire about the meeting location, she asked, maintaining her composure. I knew that revealing this information too early would only complicate things further, so I firmly chose not to disclose it. Addison, I believe we can continue this conversation if the issue is compensation, Elaine said, as if hoping for a way out for both of us. The board greatly values your contributions to Harbor Point. The irony in her words was almost unbearable. After 3 years of rejected salary requests, now they were finally recognizing my worth? I could no longer stay silent. It's not just about compensation, I replied bluntly. It's about recognizing the value of employees, showing respect for them before they leave. She remained calm, but I could sense a shift in Elaine's tone when she suggested we meet in person. What time tomorrow morning? She asked. Although I had no intention of returning to Harbor Point, I understood that this meeting was an opportunity to achieve a professional closure on this chapter of my life. 9 a.m., I replied. However, I must emphasize that I have signed a contract with another company. I will not be available to negotiate a return. She didn't fully believe me, but I could sense her understanding. I'll see you at our office tomorrow morning. After the call ended, I sat down, poured myself a glass of wine, and stepped onto the balcony. The spring afternoon felt refreshing, the cool air offering relaxation, though my mind was still filled with thoughts and emotions that weren't easy to shake off. The city lights began to twinkle as the evening dusk settled in. I couldn't stop thinking about the meeting tomorrow. While I didn't want to return, I knew it would be an opportunity to confront the mistakes of the past, not just for my own sake, but also to provide feedback that might help those who remained at Harbor Point. A chance to share, to reflect, and ultimately to gain the closure I needed. Suddenly, my phone buzzed with an email notification. A message from David Klein appeared on the screen, "Welcome to the family." Looking at the screen, I felt the confirmation of my right decision. While tomorrow would bring some things to face, I knew I wasn't going back to the past. I had stepped into a new chapter, one where I would be valued and could truly grow. The next morning, I called David to confirm my decision. David, I've thought it over, and I'm excited to join the North Bay team. Thank you for trusting me. My voice was firmer than ever, as if in that moment, I had completely left the past behind. David immediately responded, his voice warm and sincere, "We're so glad you agreed, Addison. You will be an important part of this team. We believe you'll help us grow even further." His words brought a sense of relief that spread through my entire body. I no longer had to worry about whether I made the right choice. The uncertainty disappeared, and I began to clearly feel the new opportunities opening before me. I no longer had to endure unfair situations or decisions that lacked justice. Everything now felt like a blank page, and I was the one holding the pen to write my new story. A week later, I officially started my new job at North Bay. When I first walked into their office, I couldn't help but be impressed by the spacious, modern, and bright working environment. Large windows let natural light flood in, creating an open atmosphere that encouraged creativity. The workstations were unpartitioned, the open space allowed for easy and free communication. I could feel the dynamic, creative energy in the air, where everyone could truly unlock their potential. The team at North Bay was warm and professional. They welcomed me as a new friend, with no distance or division. I immediately noticed the difference between this place and Harbor Point. Here, I truly felt valued, and more than that, I felt the respect I had always hoped for. No more pointless meetings or misunderstandings about my abilities. People here not only focused on the results of the work but also cared about each individual's personal development. On my first day, I was given a few small tasks to familiarize myself with the job, but I immediately felt the difference in how people treated me. At Harbor Point, I had always had to fight to prove myself. But here, I was trusted from the start, given important tasks with significant impact. It made me feel that I was not just a part of the team, but a vital link that helped drive the overall development. When I went home at the end of the day, looking at my new North Bay employee ID in my hand, I couldn't help but smile. It wasn't just a card, but a symbol of freedom, of the recognition I had been searching for all along. I had officially entered a new chapter of my life, where I could decide my future, where I no longer had to wait for recognition from anyone but myself. Olivia's words still echoed in my mind, "You deserve a better job, you deserve to be treated better." And now, I no longer had to look back to the past for recognition. I had done it. I was living exactly what I deserved, and more importantly, I was walking the path I created for myself. In the following days, I gradually adapted to the new rhythm at North Bay. Each morning, as I stepped into the office, I could feel a different kind of energy. Every person on the team had a clear goal and passion, and I no longer had to struggle to prove myself. They saw me with respect, and that made me feel truly valued. Within the first few weeks, I was entrusted with important projects, something I had never received at Harbor Point. Each time they gave me a new task, I could clearly sense their trust in me, and I pushed myself to work as hard as I could to not let them down. This wasn't just about the work, but also about the feeling of being respected and appreciated. One morning, while sitting in my office, I received an unexpected call from Elaine. "Addison, I just wanted to congratulate you on your wonderful start at North Bay. I know you'll succeed." Her voice was sincere and gentle, but I could feel that it was a heartfelt congratulations. She wasn't just a manager, but someone who had truly recognized and appreciated my value, despite everything that had happened. I felt a sense of relief, as if the old relationships had been resolved peacefully, and I could fully focus on the future ahead. As each day passed, I noticed changes within myself. I no longer felt anxious or confined by rigid frameworks. At North Bay, I was free to be creative, allowed to make mistakes and learn from them. People weren't afraid to share ideas and encourage each other to grow. One afternoon, while sitting in a meeting with my colleagues, I realized I was working in an environment where innovation and creativity weren't limited. I could contribute fully without worrying about being misjudged or overlooked. On my first Monday at North Bay, I had a meeting with the client strategy team. Sitting at the meeting table, looking around at my colleagues, I felt a sense of belonging. The atmosphere in the room was a combination of creativity and efficiency, everyone contributing ideas and listening to each other with respect. When the meeting ended, I received an email from David. "Addison, I want you to join an upcoming special project. This will be an opportunity for you to showcase your leadership skills and strategic vision." At that moment, a sense of pride swelled within me. Not only was this an opportunity to prove myself, but it was also a confirmation that I had found a place where I truly belonged. I no longer had to fight for recognition, no longer had to wait for someone else to notice me. Now, I was the one deciding my future. When I got home after a challenging day at work, I reflected on everything I had accomplished, and a feeling of fulfillment washed over me. I had traveled a long road, full of challenges and pain, but finally, I had found a place where I could grow. Everything was starting to change, not just in terms of my work, but also in how I saw myself. And now, I no longer worried about past mistakes. I had learned how to embrace challenges, face injustices, and move forward. I had found a place where I was not only allowed to grow but also given opportunities and, most importantly, recognized for the contributions I had made.